Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Be On Sunday. And guys, I am super stoked because I've had this day on the calendar for quite some time. With me is a couple of my really good friends. We have Joey and Chrisy Silva. We have Stef Taylor, and we have JK, our lead pastor. And this time, guys, we are going to talk a little bit about Vox music. We're going to talk about the album More Than Alive, and we're going to dive a little bit into the livelihood of everyone in this room. So welcome, guys.
Good to be here.
Yeah, what is going on? Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. It is is it the first week, second week of January? I don't know anymore.
First week.
First week of January. How was everyone's New Year's?
Quiet.
Different.
Yeah, quiet. Hanging out. It's good.
Yeah.
Same.
Wow, that was pretty awesome.
New Year?
My New Year was great. You know, I was
Hey,
able.
you just got back from Disney World, right?
I did. It was. I haven't been to Disney World since I went once, and it was one of those things where we had it on the calendar and we kind of just went and did it, and it was fine.
There you
And it was a magical kingdom.
Was it good?
It was a magical kingdom.
Good,
It was
good.
fun. I mean, it was a little bit of waiting here and there, but it was still fun.
Okay.
It was still fun.
Good.
But new year, new things up and coming. So last year was a different year for Vox music and Vox in general. We've talked to a couple of you guys throughout the year on different podcasts, but this past year, looking back, you know, I want to talk a little bit about some trials and tribulations that Vox music had over the course of the year. I know there's some major successes. You guys released an awesome album, which I actually checked all the stats for, are pretty awesome.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I checked them this morning. I mean, thousands of listens. I couldn't quite see what Spotify had, but I looked at iTunes and I looked at some of the YouTube stuff, and a lot of views. But I just want to talk a little bit from your guys' perspective. What last year meant to you for Vox music? Joey, I guess we could start with you.
Yeah. So October 2019 was when we actually captured these songs, and we had these goals of a March release in 2020.
Yeah.
But something else got released in March of 2020, and it kept getting pushed. This album project kept getting pushed.
Yeah.
So that was a hurdle. In a lot of ways, allowed us to grow a ton and learn a ton before releasing music. We also just figuring out how to continue to care for our teams, and it was 8 months of almost very little serving, and so we're just wrapping back into it. Excited for weekly services. Yeah.
Going into COVID, how many people do we have in Vox Music? Pre-COVID?
About 160 across all campuses. And right now we're learning and figuring out where we're at with people who've moved. We had a lot of students who've moved back home. A lot of people who don't feel comfortable, have families, so they can't serve. So we're not in fear, really in faith, because God's been always faithful in allowing people to, or growing our teams. But it's definitely a unique time, of people serving.
And Steph, talking a little bit about the album when we recorded it. It was October 2019. And the release dates, we've kind of sporadically pushed them throughout the year. What is it like dropping one of those releases and just kind of going on YouTube and be like, wow, this is something that we wrote, we got all the instruments, we practiced, and boom, now it's on YouTube getting thousands of views. What is that like for you?
So it's exciting. It's exciting that that people are listening, that people are engaging. It's also, I haven't really been on YouTube because in the process of getting ready to release an album, I mean, I can't tell you how many times going into it, I listened to the songs over and over and over and over. So by the time that album's been released, I've already listened to it so many times. I'm not sick of it. I'm very excited, but I am ready for new songs. And so it is exciting because from the beginning,
Hey, right there.
No, but from the beginning, it was always our heart to let music be this instrument that would really carry the gospel. And so it's really just another evidence of God's promises being fulfilled. And so there is just anytime I see wow, songs are doing well, it's just another way that I feel like God's showing that he's always been faithful in this dream that we had from the beginning. So it's exciting.
Yeah. I mean, so Chrisy, I kind of want to move the conversation a little bit over to you, because having a conversation with Joey, he said you were kind of an integral part of writing some of this music. So I want to talk before we get into, I have some clips of songs, but before we get into it, I just want to talk, and you guys can jump in at any time, but let's talk about the writing of the music. What does that process look like to you? And every single one of you I know has a different story, but what does that process look like to you, Chrisy?
Yeah, I love songwriting because it especially when you're writing for the church, it allows you to take what God is doing in your own life and put it into words. And honestly, this album was an interesting journey for my own heart with that, because for so long I've written for me. I also wrote for me.
Yeah. that's twice. I'm counting. That's twice.
The puns.
Yeah.
But I've written essentially for me, like, this is what God is doing in my heart. And honestly, when I've written from that place, it's where songs come from. But in some ways, it makes it hard to let them be for other people. And when we started writing this album, I remember going into one of our many retreats and having this encounter with the Lord that basically I had to surrender this idea that if I want to write for community and with community, then that's the heart I need to write from. So how do I take what God is doing in my own personal life and my own personal walk with him and not, and put it in words that people can receive it and hear it, but also with open hands, as an offering of like, this is what the Lord is doing, and also what I know he's obviously doing in other people, and how do I give them language to sing that out. So all that to say, songwriting for me is both this like beautiful process to get to express and be creative, and also sometimes really painful and difficult, because it's this like desire to keep things close, but also so much more wanting them to be reachable to so many people. And so the joy and the struggle, I guess, awesome. of putting things into words.
I did hear that you were songwriting from when you were 6 years old. Did I hear that? Did I hear that correctly?
I'm a prodigy. No,
I'm
not
just
6.
I guess
if it was
6 months.
it was like
6 months.
blue cat. No, 12.
All right, 12.
I've been recently revisiting journals from when I was 12, which I also have been doing since I was 12. And in it, I was like, I wrote a new song today. Yeah. I did album artwork for myself.
See? I mean, we're getting it all out there. So, JK,
you were playing the clarinet when you were 12.
I was.
I remember that.
Forced by my parents to play. All I wanted to do was play the drums. Yeah. That's it.
They hand you a clarinet instead.
Yeah, that's it. So, JK, I'm going to ask you kind of the same question, because from your perspective, being a pastor and seeing different things, how does songwriting kind of release some of that, inner energy, like faith? When you just write lyrics on a page. I mean, I'm sure that's a whole different process from when you're writing a sermon.
Yeah. I love being a part of the process. I love, hearing an idea from Joey or from Chrisy or from Stef and just kind of vamping on that idea. And, I think one of the special things about songwriting is finding new ways to say old truths, to re-express in a fresh way, God, I love you. I love you. And the cool thing about music is you just have such limited notes with limited melodic places that you can go, and yet you can rearrange them in 100 billion different ways. And the human heart has these deep-rooted truths that are ingrained within us. This need for God, this need for affirmation and love, this desire to know him, all these things that are written deep in our bones and our soul. And when the Spirit of Jesus in us connects with a truth that's beyond us, it makes our hearts come alive. And so for me, like, just being a part of the process, and I love the mystery of words. Like Frederick Buechner talks about preaching from the poetry of your own life. And I think that that's the essence of songwriting too, is that we're just, taking from the poetry of our own experiences and understanding of God, his truths, repackaging them, saying them in a new way that connects with people's hearts and points them up to heaven, And so it's just, it's a ton of fun. I love language in general, because it's funny how you can say something and the words you use can unlock something in somebody else's life. You know what I mean? And so when I say, Kurt, you are special. Well, that's true. We all know that. But I mean, like, it really does, like, boom, it changes, like, the atmosphere, it changes the moment. And when you release God's truth through a song, when you say you are for me, I've come to that conviction in my core that God is for me, it shifts the atmosphere in our own hearts and in a room. And so to be able to just participate with that, and I think what we're finding now with Vox Music is just the collective experience of that is really special, to be able to, like, combine our joint experiences and express something to God. is sacred
Yeah.
and beautiful. It's really awesome.
Yeah. And I just want to give a shout out to everyone who's a part of Vox Music, because
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
you know, we only have so many microphones
yeah.
here, but there's so many hands that go into this pot to create what you guys are creating. And it's amazing. Like, I find myself just driving and listening to the music and kind of just getting lost. I mean, obviously focus on driving, but you know, you can kind of get lost. And when you think about it, growing up and listening to those songs that we used to listen to, you know, some of those older Hillsong songs, and you go back to those days, you know, you guys are now doing that for a different generation, which is awesome. You know, so kudos to you, kudos to every single person who's had a hand in, you know, this album and anything else, technical, everything. So Stef, if you were all sitting right here, right now, what would be the process of starting a song? Because for me, it's so interesting. Do you start with a beat? You know, I mean, I like to DJ every once in a while, you know, so I like to lay down the track, but I mean, does it start with lyrics? Does it start with a guitar, a piano? How does that process look like? What does it look like for you guys?
So there are 1,000 different ways that you could start a song. Maybe not 1,000, but any of those ways that you have mentioned can really be the seed of a song. You know, you hear something and you're inspired, whether that's a piano lick or whether that's somebody fiddling on the acoustic. But for me, I have found that just what my personal experience, what God is speaking to me in my quiet time. Maybe it's, you know, something that the Lord drops in my heart. And literally for me, it might be just taking that idea and singing it at my piano over and over and over. And maybe some of what I'm singing is not going to be where we eventually go. But then from there, I've never been one to really write on my own. My experience with songwriting is I love collaborating. I love people. And so anything that I get to do with friends and with people that I love is awesome. And this is another piece of that, of being able to take that to Joey or to Chrisy or to Justin and saying, hey, I've got this idea. What do you think? And we may scratch what I brought, but that idea can really be the seed for something that is great. And so, or not great. It's fun to go down roads, and all ideas lead to other ideas. So
Joey, I've had this conversation with JK in an earlier podcast, but you know, take us back to some of those moments where you guys were kind of just sitting around a campfire, just jamming out on the guitar. You know, does anything like, you're all laughing.
There was usually no campfire involved.
Well, I mean,
it was like a empty room at North Campus. But
I know. I'm like,
you know,
I wish it was that cool.
Take us back to some of those moments and describe what it's like. And again, it doesn't necessarily need to come out to a song, but you know, just being in the presence of all these people, and then being in the presence of the Lord, what that means, and you're just kind of jamming. Like, what does that feel like?
Yeah, there's been a lot of times where we've started with worship, with like setting our hearts on Jesus, not for the purpose of like solely coming out with a product, but really just like, Lord, we love you. Like, reveal to us your own heart. How can we do that through a song idea? So it's often started with that. It's also started with like throwing a bunch of ideas on a whiteboard and what's sticking, and then let's split up. You know, I think Stef kind of mentioned it, but there's power in like multiple people speaking into a song, not 40 people, but keeping it tight. And it is like an intimate process. You know, I remember the very first time I ever shared a song, I think with Justin, I was like terrified, and I knew he was for me.
It sucked.
I was
so bad.
It did not make it on the album.
The truth comes out. I love it.
But it's an intimate part of your own self that you started to work on. So it's like you don't want it to be a bunch of people, but with multiple people allows multiple perspectives, you know, multiple like different interactions with the Lord, and how does that impact like the words and the melody, you know. And
that's an interesting perspective. And JK, I just want to follow up before we get into the songs, but you have been in a band prior to, you know, being a preacher. You were part of Holy Fire. That was pretty much your life for a numerous amount of years. Right. So writing songs with that group comparatively to writing songs from here, what are some similarities and some differences between, you know, the different people? I mean, I know your process is a little bit different now because, you know, you're not the lead singer anymore, unfortunately.
They kicked me out. Yeah.
I know he wants me to plug. I'm waiting for it. But what are some situations where it might have been a little bit different? Yeah, no, it is different, but it's actually sweeter. I think that, you know, Chrisy could tell you this, she's a therapist, but I do think that writing songs is like a psychological journey in that, like, it exposes insecurities, it exposes
your issues. It because like, is it my song or is it God's song? Or can I, I think if we just look at us plus my wife and Madison and a few others, if we just look at the journey we've been on for years now, you look back at all of like our own insecurities that have kind of come out through the songwriting process. I think we all have a real journey there. But for me, when I started writing songs, it was the, I have an idea and it's from God, and so no one change it or adjust it. It came straight from heaven to me, and this is it. And so, it was very personal and very sacred and very like, don't touch this. I created it, and I think it's really special. And as you mature as a songwriter and as a human, you realize that like the body of Christ is a really sweet thing, that like hands and feet and knees, they all complete one another. And that really comes across in a community that writes songs because, for me now, at this point in my life, candidly, like I don't have an ego attached to an idea. Like if it sticks and it speaks, well, then let's use it. And if we can't, I'm not going to go home and weep about it, but there was a time that I would have, like that I would have been like, oh my gosh, they rejected my idea, but as you evolve as a person and as a songwriter, you realize like, hey, this isn't about me. It's about glorifying Jesus. And I know that's easy to say, but it's a lot harder to live. Yeah. And then, so now at this point, in those early days writing songs, it was really kind of like my sacred poetry to Jesus a lot of times. Now I take a very, almost opposite approach where I actually enjoy more sitting with Joey when he has an idea 60% there and going, hey, let's take that idea a different direction or let's bring it to another place. And maybe I can help expand what God's doing in you rather than always being the initiator of the first idea. I still enjoy that, but I actually enjoy more. I'm getting old, Kurt. I enjoy more kind of partnering with someone else's idea than I do kind of bringing my own at this point. But it's all sweet, but it's that's the journey. Yeah.
So I want to add to that. Yeah. So in that process of being open to multiple perspectives, I too had that same thing in the very beginning of like, I didn't want anybody to change it. It was my song and I had to sing it, right. And like, as I've begun to die to that, what I realize is if we're honest, we like to look for ourselves, right? So if you're looking in a picture, you look for yourselves. And so what happens is when you bring multiple voices in, you open up for multiple people with different perspectives, with different backgrounds to be able to grab a hold of a song and make it their song and make it something that God can use to open up a place in their heart. And so it's very sweet to be able to do things together and to kind of die to that idea of this is my song. Yeah. And there's a place for that, but, not here.
Yeah, I think when you're writing for a church especially and for a community of worship, if my identity is tied up in that song, I'm probably not writing from a really healthy place. In other words, like, it can't be like, well, I did this. It's like, well, that's kind of the antithesis of what church music should really be all about because it's all about him and we glorify him. And so this is only possible with believers who have done some significant heart work, or it just becomes a tit for tat. Who did what? This is mine. That is mine. It can get ugly fast. Yeah. I'm thankful that we've been evolving as a community where we're more and more and more and more comfortable, really genuinely making it about Jesus. And everybody would say that, but in our own hearts, it's a process.
Yeah, it's super powerful to hear how focused you guys are on the direction of the group in general. But it's a perfect segue because I want to talk about a couple songs on the album. And I have some clips here that I'm going to play. And I just want to talk about the lyrics behind, what you guys are saying. How did you come up with these lyrics? What was the inspiration? So our first song is Father.
From the beginning, you never wavered, and you saw every detail, patient in nature, relentlessly loving, and you don't miss a moment.
So you saw every detail. I think that was one of the things that jumped out on me as I listened to the song because, and Stef, I'll kind of direct this towards you. What was the story behind this song?
So it actually started with Joey.
Oh, Joey, I'm sorry.
No,
it's fine. If I remember correctly, I wrote this whole song by myself, actually.
This is actually mine.
So we had this, I don't even know how many years ago, we had this songwriting retreat that when I think back to it, it's not that it didn't go well, but it maybe wasn't the most productive. We didn't come out with a ton of songs. But Joey and I got put into a group, and it was really frustrating when you've spent a couple days and you're not really getting anywhere. And he kind of comes out with this one line. And I think it was, let me see if I can remember. It was, "You're a father who doesn't hold back from us." Was that right, Joey?
I was like randomly singing it at a small group,
community
group. Yeah.
And honestly, it just jumped out to me personally. So without going into crazy detail, I have a little bit of a broken family. My growing up was very interesting. And so my view of father was broken. And so the Lord just kind of really just spoke to me in that moment. And I was like, "Joey, would you care if we started like working on this?" And it was a process of, I want to say like a year and
we changed so many stuff
and a half. But that line, "You saw every detail," was, I feel like that one actually came pretty early on. And it really was, even though growing up, I might have felt like family members missed things in my life, God never did. And literally I had a picture of God when I was young. And when I was playing piano, and I literally had a picture of God the Father sitting in the room. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was honestly the shift of really seeing that the most precious relationship I have is the one with God as Father, and how that grabbing a hold of that can change the entire trajectory of your life. Yeah. And so, it took about a year and a half, I think, to fully write that song, but that was kind of the beginning of it. I went through so many changes.
And talk about like multiple voices impacting like the strength of a song is like we all have different experiences with our like earthly fathers and families. And so like my perspective was different than Stef's, but then like blending it together allowed like far more people, I feel like, to be able to relate to it.
Yeah,
that's powerful. So Chrisy, this next one is going to be a little bit more directed towards you, but we'll take a listen and then we'll chat about it.
Grow in me dependence in your goodness. Deepen me in truth that won't let go. You are the assurance I lean into. I belong to you.
So that one right there.
That's a pretty slick fade down.
Yeah, you
there.
like that?
I like that. Yeah, that was nice.
It's years of years.
Yeah,
of
he's got that.
So Chrisy, talking about these lyrics, and Joey actually mentioned to me that you have a great story behind this song. If you want to, briefly describe what that story is.
Yeah. I mean, I was just even reflecting, I feel like those lines, we could just play that again and then go on to the next song. I feel like those lines really sum up essentially what this song is about, this idea, even that first line, like grow in me dependence in your goodness.
Yeah.
Probably in, 2014, 13, I don't know, in a season of depression, really wrestling with mental health struggles. I would just walk my block and talk to God over and over. And in the graciousness of God, I remember one day just hearing him so clearly say, "You don't believe I'm good." And that my character is fully good, that there's nothing I could do that wouldn't be for you. And then kind of flash forward, essentially in my 20s, family went through a really significant loss with my mom passing away. And, this song is not necessarily like connected to that fully, it's really this like just journey of this deep soul belief that God is actually good. And that even in loss and suffering that he's for me. I mean, that's really what the song is about. But really those first initial lyrics, like grow in me dependence in your goodness, because this is also a song of faith. Like Justin was saying, this idea that like singing out what we believe and giving people language to be able to continue to increase our faith. Because, there are days where I'm like, are you really good? Grow me dependence in your goodness. Just like, how can I that much more believe that you are actually for me in the midst of it? And just that proclamation of like how wonderful it is to know you're good. Like how much deeper, I'm a therapist. I work with people who really struggle with believing in hope, like having hope for things. And so I'm just so grateful to be someone who can say that with my own weaknesses, I genuinely believe that God is a good God and is actually for us. And that can is just such a breath of hope. And so, in writing this song, I mean, I definitely wrote a good portion of it. Definitely had help from Justin and Joey.
We changed
it was
so much
rewritten.
stuff.
It started out as In Every Moment, and it was this like kind of folky jam on an acoustic guitar. Talk about vulnerability. I played it at a songwriting retreat, and it basically was like, that's not very good. Like Justin, thank you, Justin, was like, I liked it, but it really like it didn't fly, and you know, whatever. So I like wanted to keep pushing forward, and how do I give this concept language and give this concept a voice? And so
and then someone saying, you awful, like super high.
Yeah, it took a lot of rewrites, and again, writing with community, we had like an original, and then something different, and then the chorus was just, we tried it on Sunday and it was just okay, so we came back in and changed it up, and then Joey with his smooth vocals brought it home.
Except just then
that
I was
October
like,
night. I know.
So going into the music, and I know sometimes when I'm in the crowd worshiping, I kind of just get lost, you know, and I'm sure you've all been there where you're just vibing and all of a sudden you kind of forget where you are. Does that ever happen to you when you're on stage and you just forget to play? I mean, I've always wondered that question, where you're worshiping so hard that you're like, oh, I'm actually playing music.
Sometimes
right
I
now.
have like the split right before the very first line, and I'm like, oh my Lord, what's the first line?
Whenever I get nervous, I always forget the lyrics and the melody, and sometimes the words.
Yikes.
That's
song.
That's pretty much the whole thing. Yeah.
That's funny.
That's why we practice.
Yeah.
All right, so we got another song coming at you.
I'm like, what's it gonna be?
We'll mash up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was my bad.
That was a sweet combo.
Yeah. All right, More Than Alive. I think this is probably one of my favorites from the album. It just, you know, every time you guys play it live, every time I hear it, there's just so many times where you just get so amped up and you're all excited. So JK, you know, I know you had a little bit a part of this. I'm going to say a little bit because, you know, Joey told me to say a little bit.
Yeah.
But,
no,
you know,
a lot of it.
so More Than Alive, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. It's so funny. That one came out of, you know, my 90s grunge rock phase.
Yeah.
It really did. Like, it started with like the dung 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 dung, and we dung 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 on more. You know, and that thought of just like I wanted to write a song of hope. And a song that just said like, listen, don't lose sight of the fact that there really is hope for the future. You know, this was way pre-COVID-19, pre all that stuff. It was just like, you know, I was looking as a pastor, as a friend, as a family member in my family, watching so many people have that vacuum of like, well, what am I clinging to? You know, and the resurrection power of Jesus abiding as a seed within me is the secret, right? And so that's kind of where the song started. And I had a lot to do with the chorus and the melody. And then I think they changed all my verses, but it was good. Like, I remember my wife, Chrisy, came back and she's like, hey, we rewrote some of the verses and they were so much better. And I was like, yeah, that's it. That's even better, you know? And then I think Joey, you guys had a lot to do with that bridge. And when that came, I was like, yeah, that takes it to another level. So it just fit together. And then we put Casey in there and it was like, wow, Casey, you just made this a song, you know? And so, it was a sweet process, but it all started with that idea of like, we're going to prophesy, you know, like I always, when we talk about our music at Vox Music, I always want it to be music that carries the heartbeat of the house, carries the voice that God's called us to prophesy over New England. We always talk about the Leash Church region becoming the most spiritually vibrant, and to just like speak over dead situations, dead families, dead communities. We're more than alive. Yeah. That was the prophetic word that was in my spirit as we started this one.
One thing too, I think we often try to find the balance of like, how can we say it super creatively and artsy and also like applicable and relatable and understandable. And so like let's just have people sing out as loud as they can that nothing is hopeless. Like that's such a powerful thing. And I remember you were saying like, I want to see my church sing this out, you know? I think that's really,
and we wrestled with it. We were like, is that cheesy? Just to like yell, nothing is hopeless.
No,
but we were like, wow, you know.
All right, I have one more clip, and I just want to talk about a couple other songs on the album, but one more clip that I think is pretty powerful, and you guys can chat about it.
Let every heart break free, so every eye can see what your love is, what your love is. Every sin erased from one drop of grace. It's what love is, it's what love is. Let every heart break free, so every eye can see what your love is, what your love. Come on, every sin.
So that one right there, I remember filming that one, and people were just getting amped up. It was awesome. So, you know, Joey, I know you were the lead singer for that, but when you're standing there singing it for the, you know, for a crowd for our live album, what is it like seeing everyone just you know, hands up, praising as hard as they possibly can? What is that like?
it's awesome. And yet I'm also just like, I want to so relate. I so want to receive, you know? I often, me and Steph and our worship leaders, we often try to keep our eyes open because there's a lot of good reasons for that, just to see what God's doing in the room. But there is like a real privilege to be able to like see from that perspective of see like the countenance change. It's like one of the, you know, the best things that I'm going to experience in life is seeing the Lord like touch someone and see their like physical countenance change. And so, so but also like I'm very much like receiving and Lord, what are you doing in me right now in this moment?
So the title of that song, who comes up with the titles for the song? Is that, you know, the songwriter, or is it a collective group?
It's me. Yeah. No, it's actually something we really do bat around. Yeah. Titles songs usually have 3 or 4 different names before we land on one. And it's kind of a collective decision at the end of the day. But they usually, I don't think this song started to be called What Love Is. I think it had 3 or 4 different names before
Every
that.
Heart maybe. And
Oh yeah.
It's usually like a catch line, whatever can kind of
encapsulate
the
it.
title to the
You listen to it a couple times, whatever.
But then you change the lyrics and you're like, well, we just lost our title. So like,
that's not even in there. So that song right there, you know, What Love Is, what does that mean to you guys in terms of your personal relationship and your personal walk with Jesus? You know, what does that mean to you? And Steph, I'll throw this at you.
Yeah, man, perfect love casts out all fear. Like even right now, like in this season of COVID and the season where there's so many things that practically we could be afraid of, receiving the love of Christ means that I can live in confident assurance that I am cared for, that I am believed in, that I am loved. And so, and so like that's what love is. Yeah. Love is a promise. Love is a person. It's more than a feeling or an emotion. It's this confident hope that I can grab a hold of every day. And what a joy that we get to sing, that we get to play, that we get to declare that.
Yeah, for me, this song is super close to my own heart. Like one of the forming parts of it kind of came out of my own like snotty journal writing with the Lord.
Snotty, like tearful.
The truth comes out.
No, like in an emotional process with the Lord. And just like I think, you know, one of the most popular passages of scripture, for God so loved the world. And just this idea of God's wideness, you know, God, like how wide God's love is, you know, and so like even those first few lines, like, you know, every heart be free, or every beating heart was made to beat for one. The idea that like, Lord, your heart is extended, you know, and it's actually flowed out of like praying for family members and friends for them to receive the love of Christ and believing almost in faith that like, your love is wide enough, you know.
So good.
And I know there's some songs we haven't talked about, like Miracle and Shadow and some other songs on the album. You know, what is, if you want to give us a brief story about one of those songs, but what's a song that really hits home with you guys, and you know, it's just some reason behind that? Because we've kind of hit the big ones that you've released, and they're great. We can watch the videos; they're awesome. But there's some songs that haven't necessarily been released yet. So, do you have any stories behind any of those songs?
Yeah, I mean, me and Joey got a few that we've been working on recently that I'm actually really excited about, but I can't tell you about those yet. They're gonna be on the next album.
The new album.
Yeah, but we're excited about them. I mean,
yeah.
honestly, there's some songs that have come out just in the last couple months that most of them have been that you've initiated them or Christy's initiated them, and I've gotten to play a part in just helping them get shape. But they're strong, and they're just. I'm like, there were a couple like maybe 2 months ago. I was like, we have to sing this soon because our church needs to sing this. You know, just because I really do think that some of them capture some of the heart of what God is doing in our church. And so, I'm excited. We're doing another album as soon as we possibly can.
And that's exactly where I wanted to go.
You and me, Kurt.
Yeah. So for Vox Music, you guys want to drop different albums. You want to do more live recording. Obviously, everything is still, up in the air. But what does that look like for Vox Music? What are some of your goals for 2021 in terms of not only dropping albums, but maybe just growing as a community? You mentioned you have 160 people involved in Vox Music. That's a ton of people, all over New England.
Right.
So what does it look like for the next year? Obviously depending on governors and states and things like that. But what does that look like for you guys as a whole group?
I think from a creative standpoint and a songwriting standpoint, our heart is definitely to push forward. Yeah. So, what does it look like to release new songs, release singles, throughout the year? What does it look like to release another album, in the next year or 18 months? I love the idea of live albums. I also love the idea of studio albums. And so just the different things we can do creatively. And then also, how do we grow in the rhythm of songwriting? And song arranging, how can we be creative? We have so many people, some of us sitting here and a handful of others are passionate about lyrics. That's like my heart is writing lyrics. We have people who are like super passionate about drum fills and electric lines and piano lines. And so just growing that, giving us space to do that is definitely a goal of mine.
And what does 2021 look like for some of you guys?
Yeah, I think, more than alive is, I've used this phrase, but it's a seed for what's to come. And so I think building upon what God did and being thankful, but also turning our feet to what he wants to do presently. And I really do think that that there is growth this year for us. I would say creatively, I'm excited. I'm one of the ones that I really love arranging. I'm excited to see what that looks like. I'm also just excited to see this discipline of songwriting grow within our community, and inviting a few others into the process. Because again, it's about multiple perspectives. And so I'm excited for that this year. And so we're not stopping. We're going to keep pushing. And I think prayerfully, like writing more.
And I think my prayer is, and I'm sure it's all of our prayers, even as we've been talking about these songs, like reflecting on like how like we just need to hear God's voice. And so like that song Shadow is all about like being in the shadow and the shelter of God's wing. And we wrote that far before COVID. And yet that's personally spoke to me through this season. The idea of like God's goodness is speaking to me right now, and so for the next 12 months, like, Lord, we are open to your voice, for like that future, future time.
Because even like when you read through the Psalms, I love that it gives you verbiage and language to express how you're feeling with God. And I believe like even as we talk about like prophesying, like God can give us words and he can give us language that people can grab a hold of in good times, but also in difficult times when there is a lot of loss, that they can declare that nothing is hopeless or just one touch is all I need. And like, when you don't see the miracle, that like just one touch is all I need, and that it's coming. And so really like my prayer for all of us is that we just like, we don't neglect just being in his presence and sitting in that. And then from that place, writing and declaring the truths of God, because it's going to give other people language to sing and just declare the truth of God in their own life.
So I did want to, before we sign off, I did want to ask you guys a specific question, and everybody's going to get a chance to answer, but I want you to think of one song that has maybe kind of changed your trajectory of where you are today. One song from the past that you've listened to that's been like, man, not only is that my jam, but I listen to that and I just Joe's getting his phone out. So,
I have a running playlist called My Right Now song.
My Right Now song. So, I think back, every single time I hear this song, for some reason, I just get in the zone, and it's shout to the Lord. And I know you guys are all laughing.
That was running through my head right now as an option.
Just saying, every time I hear that song, it brings me back to my childhood. It brings me back to when I first started following Jesus, and I'm like, man, this is the song that kind of set me up for where I am today. I'm just saying, it may be a little old school, maybe a little original.
I'm not looking for the coolest song.
No, I mean, besides this one Third Day album that I think it was called the Offerings 3 or something like that. I used to listen to that album on repeat, but I think that was the one song that I listened to. You guys are all laughing at me. I mean, I'm not that old, am I?
I don't know what Third Day is.
I went to so many Third Day concerts.
Yeah, see, that's right, Steph. For those of you guys listening and you don't know who Third Day is, they kick it. I'm just saying,
kicking it.
They're kicking it. So
they kicked it.
So Chrissy.
I'm kidding. We love Third Day.
Yeah, I love Third Day. So, Chrisy, I'm going to start with you. What's one song that's really kind of changed your outlook? And it could be anything from music writing to singing to playing the piano. What was that song?
Ugh, I might do the classic answer one song, but really answer 3, but try to say it quickly.
Yeah.
So honestly, interestingly, the first thing that came to mind is Death Cab for Cutie's Plans album, which I know is the super indie, Chrisy version of myself. I just love Ben Gibbard's writing. So since I was young enough to listen to my own indie music and things like that, or old enough, I should say, that really he's been an influential person in writing. But from a Christian perspective, shout to the Lord, honestly.
See, I'm just saying that's 2 votes. That's 2 votes.
For me, it was honestly because I have a distinct memory of waking up and hearing my mom washing the kitchen floor and singing that song at the top of her lungs in her beautiful soprano off-tune pitched voice. And it's just, to me, such a statement of legacy of seeing her life in Jesus and following in that and wanting to literally thinking to myself, I want to write songs that people sing in their kitchens one day. So that's awesome. I love that we had the same one. That's awesome.
Yeah. So Steph, what about you?
So I really like Israel Houghton and a lot of these gospel really short songs. And so I remember some of the first memories I have of personally connecting with the Lord at my piano was singing this song called Friend. I'll spare you, I won't sing it, but Friend that will never be a friend, as dear to me as you, singing that. Then there was another guy named Clint Brown, and he had this song that it just said, just to be close to you is my desire. And so those songs were really they're still so special to me. And even though there's tons of others that I can think of, I love going back to those just simple choruses that just really simply put language around who God is to me personally. So. Yeah.
And so what about you, JK? It can't be a Holy Fire song either.
No. I one I wrote. No, it really spoke to me. No. No, I think for me, when I first became a Christian, I was a teenager. I was coming out of, a rock and roll band as a kid and just playing music all the time. And my youth pastor, I'll never forget it. We're sitting in his Isuzu Trooper. He put in the Delirious Cutting Edge album, and so Obsession came on. Boom, 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 boom,
so
boom, boom, boom. And I was like, this is a Christian song? I was like, this song is not, it doesn't sound like shout to the Lord, no offense. No offense. No, it's great. Hey, bless shout to the Lord. Yeah. But I remember listening to it, and the chorus is, my heart burns for you. My heart burns for you. And then it just goes into this part where he's just like, la 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 la. He's just crying out. And I remember hearing that as a 15-year-old kid and being like, wow, I wanna live that. I wanna burn for you, God, like that. And it just really connected with me in a way that didn't fit into the bubble of what I had heard for church music. And obviously now, in the last 20 years, there's been all these expressions of worship, which is, created some kind of flexibility, but we're still corporate in our perspective. But yeah, that was a big one for me.
I think when I think of nostalgic, one of those moments was How He Loves, when Kim Walker, and I remember
it wasn't as much laughs as my Third Day.
I remember I was in my room and my dad was watching it on his computer, and I from afar I was like, what is he watching? Yeah. And so then I watched it and I'm crying, and it was definitely impactful in my own walk with the Lord. I was young, so when that just hearing and receiving, that truth. And then I think more recently, even pushing me creatively, like songs like So Will I or Seasons, where there's like, it's capturing the gospel, it's capturing the truth about Jesus, and yet it's very illustrative, So.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Well, guys, again, I appreciate every single one of you for being here. What an awesome time I had, so thank you very much. And again, if you guys have any questions for any of our guests, you can email us at beyondsunday@voxchurch.org. And Joey, real quick, do you want to tell everyone where they can get some of the music? I know it's on iTunes, Spotify, but anywhere else?
Yeah, Apple Music, Spotify, anywhere that you stream music. And then on our website, too, there's all the links for chord charts and information about that.
Awesome. And if anyone wants to get involved, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, also our website, voxchurch.org. And then there's a Vox Music page that has all the information on, information on getting involved.
Awesome. Well, again, guys, thank you so much for being here. What an awesome time. And we will see you next week.